In order to create your own web pages and learn HTML, you need four very simple things. The first is a working computer. The second is a web browser. The fact that you're watching this on YouTube would suggest that you've got all of those, plus a working internet connection, which is helpful but not necessary. The third thing we need is a plain text document editor. On the Mac, that's TextEdit. On Windows, I think it's called Notebook. We do not want Microsoft Word or Apple Pages or any other word processing documents. We just want a plain text editor. So with TextEdit open, I'm just going to check, and here in Format, notice it says Make Rich Text. Well, I'll just select that, and this is what a normal rich text document looks like. And TextEdit is normally set up by default to open a rich text document. We don't want that. So let's go back here and make it plain text. Also, if you go to Preferences and make sure any of these smart copy, smart quotes, smart dashes, etc., all of those are deselected. We don't want those. We want plain, simple text. Notice also that if you wish, you can make plain text default for your text edit. That's up to you. Open and save. Make sure add.text extension is turned off. We don't want that. We'll be using a different extension. So here we have our plain text document, and here we come to the last thing that you need, which is the ability to use a computer in a simple way, such as how to use a mouse, how to copy and paste, how to create a new folder, etc. So let's do that right now. Let's create a new folder. I'm going to put mine on the desktop. It doesn't matter where you put it. I'm going to call mine the website. You can call yours whatever you want. Now, what is important is that everything that we create from now on needs to go inside this folder. That's because the documents we create will be linked together. And if you have them scattered all over your computer, when we place them onto a server for other people to see on the internet, those links will be broken. So everything needs to be placed together in one folder so that when they move to a server, those links are maintained. So let's just save our plain text document to start with in our new folder. And let's just go save. And we're going to save this file with the name index. And the extension is .html. Now, the reason we call this index is that when someone goes to your domain, to your website, normally they don't tell the server what page they want. So how does the server know what page to serve up? Well, it finds a file called index and serves that file up to the person requesting your website. In other words, that's the home page. So let's just save it, index.html, there it is, and it's now in our folder. Now I'm going to copy and paste some text so that we've got something to play with. I'm just going to copy a bunch of text here and paste, and I'll just change that to lowercase. Okay, and then I'm just going to save it. Okay, so here we have a plain text document. There are no hidden tags or hidden codes, which is what you would get in a word processing program. And let's just open this file in a web browser. I suggest Google Chrome. Now, notice here, our web browser is a text reader. In fact, that's all it does. It just reads text. And what it's done, it's taken our document here and just dumped it all onto the page. So there's no spacing, there's no heading, there's no paragraph breaks, nothing. It's just a bunch of text spread out across the page. And if we change the size of the page, it just squashes all the text in there to suit. Now, that doesn't look good. There's no control. So let's take control. And here we will look at the very basics and the secret to all HTML text editing. You ready? Left angle bracket, right angle bracket. That's it. That's all that HTML is. Now, what do these angle brackets do? Well, when your browser sees angle brackets like that, it does two things. One, it doesn't print this out to the page. They stay invisible. And two, it tells the web browser that there's some instructions here, that there's some instructions inside of the tag. So I'm just going to put the title of the book in here. Okay, so now we have angle brackets followed by some text here. And what do we want to do with this? Well, this is the title. So let's make this a heading. And we make this a heading by putting inside the angle brackets some instructions for your browser. H1. What does that mean? That means heading 1 or heading number 1. There are actually 6 levels of heading, H1 through to H6. H1 is the largest. A heading will make the text larger and more bold, similar to what you would see in a newspaper, a magazine, a book, or on a blog, that this text will now be shown larger and in more bold form than the rest of the text. Now, the problem with that is that your browser will look at this, say, oh yes, this is going to be the title, so it's going to be large and bold. Everything to the right of that angle bracket will be like that. But unfortunately, that also includes all of this. And we don't want that. We just want the book title to be our header. In fact, in a web page, you should only have one H1 tag. There are exceptions. For example, if you have a newspaper, you might have a number of H1 tags. But for your average web page, there's only one H1 tag. You can have multiples of the other headings, no problem. So how do we tell the browser to stop making the heading here after the letter T and not make all this also a heading? Well, we put in another tag. And that, of course, is an H1 tag. Now, unfortunately, computers aren't smart. They only do what they're told. And at the moment, what we're telling them is everything to the right of a tag like this needs to be turned into an H1. Now, notice that this H1 means that the browser is going to think that everything to the right of it is going to be a heading as well. So we haven't solved anything. So how do we fix that? Well, what we do is we put a forward slash. Now the browser knows that everything to the right of this H1 tag will be heading number 1 size, but it finishes here to the left of this little angle bracket. So that's how we create a heading, and that's how you create your first HTML. So let's just save our document, and let's go back to the browser and hit the little rewind or reload arrow. If you're using Safari, that will be found in the address bar over here. But for all other browsers, it's on the left. Oh, well, there you go. Isn't that exciting? You've made your first heading. Notice two things. Not only is it large and bolder than the rest of the text, but it's actually added in a line or an empty return and separated the heading from the rest of the text. Your browser is designed to do that for you. And if we go back to our text, here we have all of the rest of the information on the page, and this part here is actually a chapter heading. So maybe we want to make that a heading as well. So let's do that by making another tag, left angle bracket, right angle bracket at the beginning, and let's make a closing one as well. And let's make this a heading size 3. You can make this any other heading size, just preferably not an H1. And H3 here. And also don't forget your forward slash to make it a closing tag. These are called paired tags. That is, they have an opening and a closing tag. There are other tags as well besides that. So let's just save this and have a look at our page again. Refresh. Well, there we go. We now have another smaller heading, a subheading if you will, which has been placed on its own line, like the main heading, and spaced away from the rest of the text. So that's looking a lot better already. But notice here that all of the paragraph text is just stuck in together. There aren't any paragraph breaks, and it becomes a little bit difficult. Imagine trying to read an entire page of 500 lines like this. You'd kind of go blind. So let's go back and let's put in our next type of tag, which is a paragraph tag, left angle bracket, right angle bracket. And how do you tell it it's a paragraph? Well, you type in the letter P, like that. That's it. So let's put in our closing P tag. Okay, so / and P. So there we go. Now we need to put in paragraph tags for the rest of it as well. So let's just quickly do that. This is a very large paragraph. I'm actually going to break it up. Okay, so that's our closing. Put in another opening one. And there's a bit of a gap here. We'll get rid of that. And let's make this all one paragraph. Whoops. Don't want a capital. Okay, so now we'll save it. And let's go back to our document and refresh. So now you've told your browser to make these sections of text paragraphs. And to do so, it hasn't changed the font. It hasn't made it bolder, but it has put a return between each paragraph. So now it looks nice and readable and more what you would expect with a document. Now let's just go back here and notice here, and I'll just emphasize this by getting rid of all of this white space, all of these spaces. Let's get rid of them all. Okay, we'll save it. And what do you think is going to happen here? Let's refresh the page. What has our browser done? Well, nothing. That's right. Now this is an important thing to remember, that white space in your actual document, that is space between tags, is ignored by your browser. Now that's a good thing, because that means that instead of having everything stuck together, we can put as much white space in there as we want to help us to read and understand our code. So here I've put a huge space in. Let's go back, refresh. No difference. Okay? So that's important, because as our web pages become larger, having white space in there that isn't shown in the browser is very handy, especially if you want to put in some explanations for yourself, which you can do quite easily. Now, we'll look at that a little bit later on. No, let's do it right now. Let's put in a comment. Less, exclamation mark, 2 little dashes, and okay. Now let's put in here a comment for ourselves. Okay. So let's see what happens. Nothing. Notice that our comment does not show, because it has these little tags here on each end of it. So it treats anything inside these tags the same as white space, okay? And this is going to become more important as your pages become larger and more complex, so that you can leave little notes for yourself or for anyone else who's going to use the page to explain what's going on. You can also remove temporarily parts of your web page. For example, if we just take that and stick it at the end here and save and refresh, it's now removed that last paragraph. And we may want to remove something temporarily while we're sorting out our website. So that's how that's done. I'll just undo that. In fact, I'm just going to get rid of that altogether. Actually, I'll just stick it down the bottom so it's out of the way. Okay, so you've still got it there. So that's our basic text, how you format text for a website using these tags, these tag pairs. Now, what else can we do with text? Well, maybe in a book you've seen the first few words in a opening paragraph to be larger or italic or something like that. So let's do that. How do we do that? Let's put in inside the P tag there, let's put in another tag, opening, closing. So I'm just going to change these first three words and let's make them bold. Well, how do we do that? Well, maybe we can use an H3 or an H4 or 5 or 6. But remember, that's going to put everything on after it onto a new line. And we don't want that. We want it to look like a normal paragraph, but just with these first three words in a bolder text. So what's the tag we use for that? Well, if you thought that we used the letter B, that would be correct some years back. Someone decided to change it, which is kind of stupid, but what can I say? Nowadays, what we have here, the tag name that we have here is strong. And / to close it, strong. Let's save our document and go back and refresh our browser. Now notice here that this is now bold, but it's not placing everything that follows it onto a new line or into a new paragraph. So that's how we make things bold. Now, something else that we may do is use italics. So let's take the word, let's take painted green, and let's make that italic. Okay, so our little angle brackets at beginning and end. What's italic? Well, again, logic would say it would be the letter I, and that's what it used to be. But again, for some stupid reason, it's been changed. Now it's EM. The letter I is reserved for icons. Why they couldn't have just used the word icon like they use here, the word strong, who knows. Anyway, / to close it, and then EM. I'm going to save my document, and I'll just widen this a fraction, okay, so you can see it in context. Okay, now what's happened in our document? Let's go back and refresh. Where is it? Where did I put that? There it is there, painted green. Notice that that's now italic, and this is bold. But we can also nest tags. And what I mean by that, we can put another tag pair inside a tag pair. Let's make this bold as well. Opening, closing tags, / there, strong, okay. Save and refresh. So now it's italic and it's bold, okay. So we could, example, make our H1 bold as italic as well. Inside, we can place another tag and emphasize and close tag, emphasize, save, refresh. Okay, so that's how we control the text in a document by using these formatting tags. I'll just get rid of that, don't want that. Okay, so that's text, but what about images? Well, images are something a little different. And the first thing we need to do is actually get an image. So let's go back to our website here. I'm going to open a new tab and I'm going to look for a Hobbit image. So the Hobbit, let's look for a dragon. And I'll go to the images section. Now what we need is to select an image to use on our page, and we want something between 200 to 500 pixels wide, just so that the image doesn't dominate the page too much. Notice in the left hand corner the sizes show up. 250, that would do. Oh, this is nice. 480, I like the pick. So just click on it, and then right click or control click and don't open the link, open the image in a new tab. Go to that tab and then right click or control click and save image as. And we're going to save this image into our website folder. Okay. I don't want to hide the extent. Why is it doing that? Let's just save it. There we go. All done. Just get rid of these. Okay, back to our document. Now, I said that there are two different types of tags basically, and this is a paired tag with an opening and closing tag. The other type is a self-closing tag, and that is where it doesn't have a closing tag, obviously. So let's just have a look at an image tag, and an image tag uses the word or letters IMG. I'm just going to put an extra space in here. Now, it does not have a closing tag. I mean, you can put one in, it just does nothing. And the reason for that is that we're not putting an image into your document. What we're doing is we're telling the browser where the image is to go and get it, and then the browser will place it in your document. And we do that by telling it where the source of the image is. And where is it? Well, it's in our website folder. And how we do that is src, and that's short for source. So what we've got here is image, and the source is going to equal to something in quotation marks. So let's put two quotes in there. And what is it that it's looking for? Well, our image. So let's just select all of it and go back and put it into our source attribute. So that's all you need. Notice there's no closing tag, as I said. We just have an IMG tag with a source set to our file name. So let's save our document again, and let's go back and refresh our browser. Brace yourselves. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? So notice that the browser has displayed it at its default size. In other words, it hasn't made it larger or smaller. And like a title, or like an H1 or H3 or any of the headers, it's placed it on what's called a block. In other words, it takes up the full width of the page in space, even though the image is smaller than that. And then everything else goes onto a separate line. Okay, so there we go. You can add all sorts of stuff onto your page just using those basic tags. Now, I may have led you a little astray here, because if we go back to our folder, this isn't normal. Normally what would happen is that all images would be placed in a separate folder within your main containing folder. Why is that so? Well, an average website may have just one page, but it may have 5, 10, or even 50 or more pages. So it gets fairly complicated and cluttered in this folder here, especially when you have 5, 50, 500 or 5,000 images. So it's a good practice to create a new folder to hold all of our images, and we're just going to call it images. Okay? You can call it anything you want, but that's just kind of logical. And notice here that everything is in lowercase. Yes, you can use uppercase, but it's a good practice to use just lowercase in these file names. And avoid any numbers if you can, particularly at the beginning. But let's just drag our image into our images folder. So where's it gone? Well, it's in our images folder. Now, the link between these two items, this index and this image, has changed. So let's just refresh our page and see what happened. See, it's gone. The browser's put this little dummy little block here, but that link is broken. This is what I was talking about before, is that these links between items in our website folder need to be maintained. So now that we've moved our image, we need to add in this folder name to our source. So let's go back here, and the folder name needs to be the same spelling, the same word, no extra uppercase or any other changes. and then a forward slash like that. Now, what's happening now is that the browser is now going to look for a folder called images, and then it's going to look for a file inside of images with this name. So let's just save our document and go back to our browser and refresh. See, that worked. So that link has been upgraded, and it will now be maintained because we won't make any more changes in here. I just did that to show you. So this is why we don't have image files elsewhere on our computer, because when everything is uploaded to the server, these relationships must be maintained in order for our website to work. Okay, so what's next? Well, you may think that you've done it, you've created your new page, but we need something a little extra for our browser to keep our browser happy. And let's just add some space to the top of the page here. What do we need? Well, all web pages come in two parts. The first is the head and the second is the body. And we need to actually create tags for that. So let's open up some new tags up here. And the first one, as I said, was called head. And the second, let's just finish this off. And we open that up. Now, inside of the head, what goes there? Well, nothing at all that goes inside the head tags will show up on the page. The head tags won't show up, and nothing we put inside there will show up on the page. But it's still very important because something goes in there that every web page must have. And that has its own tag. Let's create that. And what is that? Well, it's called the title. And let's make the closing tag, because it's a tag pair. And let's make our title My Hobbit Website. Okay, and I'll save that. So let's go back to our document and hit the refresh button. Nothing happened, right? Because as I said, nothing in the head tags shows up on the web page. Nothing. But notice up here in the tab, we now have our title. Yes, that's not the web page, it's the title of the tag, of the tab, should I say. Now, why is that so? Why bother with that? Well, I'm just going to open up a new tab here. And before we looked for the Hobbit Dragon, let's just do that again. Now let's just scroll down here, and what have we got? Well, notice that all of these search results have a title. And this is actually the title of the page that's in the head section. And what this does is it gives the search engine and the user, that's you, a title for the search results. So it enables you and the search engine to understand what's on the page. So it's very important to have a title. And also, if we don't have a title, if we don't have this, then Google or Yahoo or Bing or whoever is going to look at your website and say, well, it has no title, so it's not really that important. We're not going to put it in the search results. Or we're going to put it on page 570 of search results, so no one's ever going to see it. So it is important that you have a title. Now the second section, I did say that there were two, is called the body. And let's just create those tags. Now the body wraps everything that's in the body. And the body we're talking about here is the actual web page, all of this content here. This is the body. So let's, I just cut that out. So let's paste it back in down here. So everything in between the body tags will show up on the web page. Now let's just save it and let's just go back and refresh, and nothing changes. Except in the background, the browser now understands that all of this content is part of the body, and search engines also realize that now this is part of the body of the page. Now, as I've said before, computers aren't that smart. They need to be told everything. And so what we're doing is we're helping our browser and the computer to display stuff where it should be as it should be. Now, there's more to it than that. There's a couple of other things we need to do. Right at the very top is a self-closing tag that you should have on every single web page. And what is that? Well, it starts with an exclamation mark to show that this is really actually important, very important. And it's called doc type. Now, doc type or document type, what is it? Well, this document is an HTML file, okay? So now we're telling the browser, I'm just going to save that. Now we're telling the browser that this file called index with a .html extension is an HTML file. Well, wouldn't you know that anyway? Well, the thing is that HTML comes in a number of flavors. At the moment, we have HTML5, and that will change in the future. So previously we had HTML2, 3, 4, etc. And what you may have had to do back then is there was stuff called XHTML or HTML3 or 4, and you'd have to write that in. Now it's HTML5, and there are lots of other documents on the web with all of those older forms of HTML. So just by putting doc type and HTML, you don't need to put a 5 in there, like that. You don't need to do that. Now we're telling the browser that not only is this an index file and it's an HTML file, the type of HTML is HTML5, the latest version. So that's why this document type is so important. And finally, we need to wrap everything, the head and the body, in another set of tags. And what are they? Well, surprisingly, they're HTML tags, or maybe not surprisingly. And I'll just put the closing tag here. Oops, helps if you spell it right. And I'm going to cut that off like I did with the body tag, and I'm going to put that right down the very bottom because that's where it belongs. So the HTML tags, paired tags, inside of that is the body and the head. And you can also, which will help the browser, this isn't vitally important, but it is helpful. We're telling it that the language is English. Now the browser doesn't necessarily need to know that, but it's very helpful for it. Now every single document or HTML document that you make should have the doc type, HTML tags, head tags and body tags. And in fact, when you get around to using an HTML editing program, it will normally create all of that for you by default. So when you open a new empty document, all this will be there. And all you have to do is type in your title name and start putting in your tags inside the body. Okay, so now I'm just going to save that. What changes do we see here? Notice what happens to the content of the page. It just moves down a fraction. Why? Because now the browser knows that the document is an HTML5 document. It has a head and a body inside of proper HTML tags, and that's its default behavior to do that. Finally, probably the most important tag, or the one that makes the internet is a link tag, where we link or hyperlink one file to another. Let's have a look at that tag right now. It's actually reasonably simple. The tag name is just A, and I'm going to put it around the hobbit here, and closing tag. Now let's just have a look at that and see what happens. Well, as you can see, it's pretty much nothing happens. And why is that? Well, we've got an A tag there, but we're not telling the browser where we want to go. And we do that by putting in a hypertext reference. Don't be intimidated by that, it's just an href. That's all it means. And a hypertext reference, and what it is where you want to go. So I'm actually going to paste or copy and paste this Wikipedia address into our link. So we have href, an equal sign, and quotation marks. You're familiar with that format. And we'll paste in the link. And we'll just save that and refresh our document. And there we go. Now, the difference here that you can see is that it's a different color and it's underlined. Now, let's just click on it and see what happens. Magic. Okay, that's the internet at work. And you've created a complete web document now. But there's a little problem with it in that you click on the link and it opens the destination in the same page. So we have to use the back button to get back to the website. Now, if someone starts clicking on these other links in here, they may have to click this back button 3, 4, 5, 10 times, and they probably can't be bothered doing that. You'll never get them back to your website. So let's change this code just a fraction, and we're going to do that at the end here, after the href or the hypertext reference, and we're going to put in a target. And the target equals, again, you'll be familiar with that form of putting an equal sign and quotation marks, and the target is underscore blank. Okay, so let's save that and go back to our website. Now when we click on it, notice it opens the link in a new tab, and if your browser is set up for new links opening windows, it'll open a new window. But your website will still be there in the background. They don't have to click any backlinks to get to it. In fact, they are disabled. So that's how we create a hypertext link. Now, you can also, let's do it right here. Let's put a link around the image. And there's the closing tag. Whoops, what am I doing? And I'm just going to copy the href and the target, and I'm going to stick it in here. Save, refresh. Now nothing happens to the image, but notice that now the cursor is a pointer, or should like a little hand and finger, whereas here it's nothing. And if I click on the image, it does exactly the same thing. Okay, so we're turning text or an image or basically anything that we want into a link, and we're opening it in a new page. So that's pretty much it. The only thing left is that the whole website looks pretty ugly. It's all shunted over to the left. There's no colors, no positioning of items. Everything spreads all the way across the page except for the image, and it doesn't have much of a style. And we're actually going to deal with that in the next video, but just to give you a heads up, what that means is that we put in a style like this, and inside the quotation marks, which you'll be familiar with now, we put, let's make font size, and let's make it 30 pixels. And then a semicolon, and we'll put another style here, color. I'm sorry about the bad spelling. It's an American thing. Save, and if we refresh, what happens to the first paragraph? Well, it gets larger and it changes its color. Now, if we go back here, we can see that this is fine. It doesn't cause too much problem here, but if you repeat this over and over and over through your web page, it's a lot of extra text cluttering things up. And also, if you've got a website that's got 10 pages with 20 paragraphs on each page, you've got to write it out 200 times. And then even worse, because you can copy and paste, even worse, copy and paste, and even worse is that if you want to change it in the future, you have to change hundreds of these style tags. So we don't write it there. The new system is to write it into a separate file and then point to paragraphs or headers or whatever, or images or whatever we want to do. And that way we just need to change it once in one document and the entire website is adjusted. So that's pretty much it. As I said, we'll look at styling in the next video, But now you've learned how to set up a document. You've learned about paired tags with opening and closing tags. You've learned about head, body, headings, paragraphs, spacing, comments, inserting images, using sources and references for links, and you're pretty much on the way to creating your own website. So we'll see you in the next video.